Today we're going to install a Syntec drill and drop 3-foot sensor. Here we have our auger, our drill and our 3-foot auger. And then we've got our tripod with our 3 pins. We've got our water, and you'll see why we're going to need this in a little bit. We've got our pigtail that connects our sensor to our radio. And then this is an extraction tool. We'll talk about using that in a little bit. And then here we have our base section of the mast. And then we have our extension right here. And then we have our spike, so our aluminum spike. And we'll walk through how to install all this, how to get it hooked up. That way you're ready to go and start measuring soil moisture wherever you are. All right, so when you're installing a sensor, you always start with your tripod. You want it to be as level as you can possibly get it. If you're installing flat, which is what we're doing here today, a little bit easier if you're on a bed. Maybe it makes it a little bit more complicated depending on how high your bed is. These are your pins, and they would go in like this. You can use a impact drill, battery powered drill. That's what I normally use. Today I'm not going to put these in, but you would drill these all the way down, and that holds the tripod secure. You do not want your tripod shifting in any way, because you want this hole to be as perfect as possible. This auger that comes from Syntec is tapered exactly like the probe. You probably really can't tell from the video, and of course this is a wore out sensor. It's been riding in the back of my truck, but it's skinnier or smaller here than it is here for that snug fit. That's why they call it the drill and drop. You drill one hole, you put this in the ground, and it's all one secure fit, but it all starts here. This is the base of what we do, and you don't want to mess this up. This needs to be as secure as possible. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm not going to put these in, but you see how that would go. I'm going to start by cranking this, and then we'll get moving. So one thing to remember when you're putting the auger in the middle of the tripod, of course there's a hole here, you put the auger in the tripod, and you don't want the your drill and auger bit to be to one side or the other. You want it to be as straight as possible when you're drilling the hole, to make sure that your sensor is also going to be vertical as possible. One thing to keep in mind as you're drilling a hole, you can tell I've only made it to about 1/3 of the way. Depending on your soil type, depending on how sandy or how much clay is in your soil and how wet the conditions are when you do the install, I certainly don't recommend installing them. My rule of thumb is if mud is sticking to my boots, it's too wet to install, but as soon as it dries, that's really the perfect time, because if the soil has moisture, it'll pull up this auger. If it does not have moisture, it's not going to want to pull up the auger and go in the ground very quickly. And also, you can tell I'm running a gas-powered drill. Depending on the conditions, you can do this with a battery-powered drill. So here, this is where our water would come into play. Don't hesitate if you need to. You don't want to use excessive amounts of water when you're drilling the hole, but you certainly can use some. This soil is probably around 10 or 12 CEC. So, it's probably kind of hard to see in the video, but you can see it's really crumbly. It's not real sticky. So it's a little on the dry side. This is in the fall. We're filming this in mid-October in Mississippi, so it's been kind of dry. And so the subsoil moisture conditions aren't necessarily ideal, but no big problem. I normally just let the water soak in for a minute and then go back to drilling. So you saw through the install process that, I had to take it out several times, add more water, get more moisture down in the soil to bring that soil out of the hole. I can tell you I've personally installed these from the beach sands of Florida to the red sandy clays of Georgia, all the way to Mississippi and buckshot and silty loam soils, all the way up to Ohio and Missouri. And every install is going to just be a little different. Each of these different little soil classes are going to be different, and you're just going to have to learn kind of as you go about what you need to do, how much water you need to add. You can see, one thing I like to do before I take my tripod out is just very gently set my auger back in the hole, and you can see I'm going all the way down. So I'm going to go all the way down with the drill, make sure the drill is all the way down to the tripod, and I'm going to ensure that when I go to put the sensor in, it's going to get a good snug fit. It's going to go all the way in the ground because you really want it flush with the top of the ground. So we'll pull this out, take our tripod off. You don't want any of this dirt to fall back in the hole. Really make sure you're careful about that. We've taken out just enough dirt to put our sensor in. We don't want any going down in that hole. Pull that, set that aside. Next step, take a little bit more water. And I normally would have a squirt bottle, but I don't have one with me today. You can go to Lowe's or any other hardware store and get you a squirt bottle, like a cleaning supplies squirt bottle, and you just kind of run it down the sensor. If not, take your water bottle, pour some on top, let it just kind of drip all the way down. And you'll take this. This is an older style probe, but they're all installed basically the same. I always let it go almost kind of free fall. Then I'll take the heel of my boot and get it all the way flush with the ground. You really want it to be as flush with the ground as possible, because the first sensor that's going to measure soil moisture is at 2 inches. And so if you're off here by an inch, you've thrown all of your measurements off. And so you don't want to do that. You want to make sure this is all the way in the ground, flush with the ground. That way your measurements are accurate. So next step is to take the drill again. So you can see I've drilled another hole. I like to be at least 18 inches away from my sensor. Drill another hole, and that'll fit this. You might have to pour a little bit of water down in this hole as well to loosen that soil up to be able to get this to go in the ground. So the next step is running the wire. So one thing I like to do is to take one of these tripod stakes and just kind of dig me a little trench to bury the wire, because if you bury the wire, the rodents won't get it. At least that's the best way to ensure against that. So I normally just dig me a trench back to the sensor. You can lay that wire down in that trench. Take the base section of your mast. First, make sure that you run your wire through the bottom end of the stake before you run it through the base section. And you can see I'm just fishing that wire down through the mast. And then the mast sits in there like so. You can take and bury that wire, cover that up so the rodents can't get to it. You can take your extension, do the same. It'll sit just like so. So now you'll take your radio, you will connect these two together, connect them there. And this is what we call the pigtail. We connect it to the sensor wire there, and this is the green connector. And so you would take the green connector, and you can see at the bottom of the radio there's the network light, the sensor light, and the power light. You can see none of them are on now. They're on a timer. When you plug the green connector in, there's only one way for it to go in. It's a simple plug and play system. When you plug it in, these will light up, and they are searching for the network. So the network, when it goes solid, it's telling you that this radio has connected with the tower, and it's talking with the tower. When the sensor light is solid, that's telling you that it's completely connected with the sensor. There's nothing wrong with your wiring. And the power light is telling you that everything's good in this radio. So you want all three to go solid. When they go solid, everything's checked out. And of course, you'll have to get your farm and field set up on my farm at highyieldag.com. And once you have all that set up, this starts talking directly with that. So once you get it plugged up and going, it's really easier to take this wire and get it to sit in there like so. You can have some of it here, and then you can have some of it between the mast. It just helps store that wire internally in the pipe a little bit better. So you just take this, push it down in the mast, and then you'll take your cap. It's got a ventilator section on it to let the moisture leave, and then just take your wire and make sure it's all secured. So at this point, you would be ready to leave it, and it'll be connecting or sending up information to your MyFarm login at whatever field you have it at. There's one other option for installing this base section. So some people really love this stake that goes in the ground like we've shown you, which is fine. You can use a bulb auger. I order mine online, and you can basically drill you a hole with that bulb auger and bury this base section to a little bit above this hole right here, and you would be completely covered. So from there down would be in the ground, and your wire would run up through there. It's just preference. We've got customers that like it both ways, so completely preference on you. But you know, we do sell this stake. Some people like it because you just have one auger to go to the field with, no disconnecting from your drills. Makes it a little bit quicker of an install. So just wanted to point that out. That is an option for you if you want to go that route. So of course we have it installed here. Just going to walk through the process of uninstalling one. So you just take them apart. So when you're uninstalling, you'll pull your radio out of the tube, disconnect the green connector, Pull your wire out. Set your mast aside. You always want to put these connectors back to keep dirt and anything else from getting in these connections that would prohibit it from having good connection next time you install it. Now let's talk about taking the sensor out of the ground. So I normally take this. You can take a screwdriver, whatever you want to take. Just kind of dig out from around the sensor. Make sure you don't damage it in any way. So the newer style sensors have the wire coming out of the top and have a wire that you can disconnect. These older styles have them where they come in at the side. So if you have these older styles, you really got to be careful to protect that wire when you're uninstalling. And this is an older extraction tool, but when they come brand new, you have a rubber pad with a piece of sandpaper on both sides, and it really fits really snug. So you can tell I'm missing one, and just unfortunately that does happen. One little trick I found is if you take one of these rubber bands that we send with the mast, you can kind of use that in place of it. Sometimes you might have to fold it twice, but you can use that to get a good snug fit. Wrap it around the sensor. Just like so. Use that handle, and again, make sure you're protecting this wire, and you want to pull up, and you'll see just pulling straight up and allowing that sensor to just freely break free from the soil. And you can see how it's connected here. I just have it clamped over with the sensor right in there, and again, just easing it up straight out of the soil.